got an answered question. I'm looking for a new direction. Live a life of indiscretion. Awareness misdirected. Can you tell me what's the lesson?
And welcome to Season 2 of Tobago CSI, and a special welcome to our live studio audience. I am your host, Anne-Marie Degazo of the Citizen Security Program. Last season in Tobago CSI, we took a bold view of crime. We looked at burglaries and break-ins, larceny, the real truth about drugs and alcohol, road safety, sex crimes, crimes as it affects our seniors and our young persons. We looked at the safety challenge and domestic violence and abuse. In this season, we will look in detail at the issue of domestic violence and abuse as we explore how it has impacted the society in which we live. You know, this season is very important to me, as I myself have been a victim of abuse as a child, and I have survived. And so we will explore the how, the why, the whens, the what of abuse as we chat with our expert panel of guests in our chat room. And then we explore further how it would have impacted persons as they live in their day-to-day lives. We will find the solutions. We will also allow you, our studio audience, and our viewing audience at home to call in and to get answers to your real questions regarding the issue of domestic violence and abuse. We will take a break shortly, and when we return, we will introduce to you our first feature guest for today, psychologist Dr. Sharon Brown. Let's go to break.
The decisions you make today influence your future. You determine where you want to be. Make the right choice. Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking. A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
Kisha, you know this girl coming here?
What's that?
I can't remember her name. But if you hear the kinds of things this girl is saying about you,
Serious? Like what?
you'll all kind of things.
Go study it. We go fix that. I hear you talking about
What
me.
you hear me talking about?
Huh?
Don't worry, y'all back up here, y'all back up.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm. Start thinking.
Well, people talk, yes.
The Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
I got it.
Got it. On my terms. On my terms. The lowest interest rate. Guaranteed.
I got no down payment.
I got it. The lowest installments guaranteed.
I got higher purchase at cash price options.
I
got same day approval.
I got it on my terms.
Standard, never beaten on quality.
Thank you. And welcome back to Tobago CSI. Now, before the break, we indicated that we're exploring in this episode domestic violence and intimate partner abuse. We would look at the causes, the signs, and the symptoms, and how we break the cycle of abuse and understand the importance of reporting. Right now, we're going to bring on set our first feature guest, Dr. Sharon Brown, psychologist. Let's put our hands together for this. Wow. So nice to have you. Okay, have a seat. It's so nice to have you with us, Dr. Brown.
It's
Welcome
nice
to
be
Tobago
here.
CSI.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I studied in America, and I started with children and families, where I did a lot of social work for about 15 years. And after doing that, I also did an AIDS outreach program with a doctor while I was in school. and we educated the community, which I enjoyed very much. Door to door, we go to business and leave pamphlets and ask the business owners to educate the community when they came into their business.
Yes.
That went very well.
Good.
After doing that, I decided I wanted to go for higher education.
Right.
So I did, and now I'm at USC, University of Southern Caribbean, as a professor teaching psychology and parent and family relations right now. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, it's good to see that you have all the technical training, but I especially like that you have been involved in the community,
Yes.
so that you understand the issues that's really affecting persons on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so as we explore the topic today, we're looking at domestic violence and intimate partner abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us from your perspective, what is domestic violence?
Domestic violence is any type of violence against a partner, whether it be psychological, emotional, sexual, financial, any type of abuse against a partner. And it could even be a dependent in the home. Sometimes we've seen that, where domestic violence includes violence against anyone that's in the home.
Right. Is that any different when we consider intimate partner? Why?
Well, you may not be living with the person. But then when you're with the person, you're doing psychological abuse against the person, calling them names, or putting them down, or any type of abuse to the person, making their self-esteem low, very low self-esteem about themselves, not feeling good about themselves. Any of that is a form of violence.
So we're saying whether or not the person lives with you or you're just in a relationship, we have the issues of violence.
Definitely.
Right. Now, we had an opportunity to look at some of the data regarding abuse, and I want to pull it up so that you can tell us or give us your own take on what are the trends that we are seeing now with domestic violence in Tobago.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're looking at between 2008 and 2015, and for me, you know, my eye goes immediately to that bar in the middle.
2012. Yeah.
2012. You know, from your experience and what you know of happening in the ground, what is that saying to us?
Well, it looks like 2010 we're seeing a rise in the amount of reporting of the violence, and it continues to escalate to 2012. Now, it could be that more people were reporting.
Right.
Now, we see a de-escalation in 2013. Why? Maybe because when they were reporting, was anything being done? Was it, when they reported, did they feel as though it was even worth reporting?
Right.
And many times when they do report, were there threats? We have to realize that, because fear will cause them not to report, because we see such a decrease in 2013 and it just continues to de-escalate to 2015.
Right.
So we see that there are cases of domestic violence as we're bringing to the forefront now, but many people are not reporting, and that's a problem.
Yeah, how significant would you say that is? Because we have it happening in our society. We know that our law enforcement is working on the ground. Matters are reaching the courts, but yet we're seeing very low reporting. What is that saying happening in our communities?
It could be a number of factors. As I've said before, every case is different, but on a whole, it could be a lack of education.
Right.
People don't know what to do. And even when they do report, what are the steps that they take?
Right.
Is anything being done in the courts? Are they being supported in the process?
Yeah.
So when they do make the report, that they don't feel that they're all alone.
Yes.
And because a lot of times when the victim tries to report, they're wondering, well, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to make it through this process?
Yeah.
Will the perpetrator come back after me? Will he come after my life?
Right.
A lot of these issues traumatize the victim, and they don't even know what they're going to do. Okay. So we need to look at all the different stages, and I would take this very seriously.
Very seriously.
Yeah, very seriously.
Okay, so let's back it up a bit and maybe understand in the first place what's causing the violence and abuse in domestic situations.
Could be a number of factors. Yeah. What we look at also is, as children, were you exposed to domestic violence? Because that affects you as you get older, in your own relationships, how you deal with your partner, even the way that you're treated. Sometimes if you've seen your mother maybe go through domestic violence, you would tend to keep it hush, not say anything to anyone, and just continue in that cycle of violence because that is what you're used to.
Right.
In some cases. Other cases, it could just be the trauma or the stigmatization attached to being beaten. And a lot of times people look at you a certain way. You're trying to reach out for support, maybe from family, the church, or even community organizations, and you're wondering, man, everybody's looking at me this way. It's a terrible feeling that the victim goes through. So there's so many factors involved. Also, when you have watched someone getting beaten,
yes,
and then you're in a situation where you're getting beaten, sometimes you're saying to yourself, well, this is maybe what I deserve.
It's normal.
It's a learned helplessness, we call it. There's nothing I can do. I'm just going to take the blows and continue because this is what I deserve. And that's how a lot of victims feel.
Okay, and this contributes to that cycle of abuse and violence that we know of.
Exactly.
Now, we're going to explore that a little later on when our next guest comes on set. But before we do, we had an opportunity to speak with two women who were victims of abuse, and here's what they had to say.
For me, I didn't actually have to do anything to cause the abuse. It all depends on his mood. So if I know he has to come, the time that he would come home and make sure the house is clean, the children are fed, I would cook his favorite meal, I would do everything I'm supposed to do in order for him not to hit or not to abuse, quarrel and stuff like that. It didn't matter what I do, how well I took care of the kids, how well I cook his favorite meal and kept the house. It all depends on the mood that he would come home in. And if he's in a bad mood, then the abuse would start. Sometimes at no apparent reason, he would hit and quarrel.
I think insecurity caused abuse in my relationship, caused my partner to be abusive. I recognize also control. He had a high level of control. He always wanted to control everything I did. He also wanted to isolate me. And because I was rebellious in that sense, never wanted him to control me, because I think I always said to myself that being in a relationship or being in love has nothing to do with control. So because of that, I always rebelled, and that caused him to be abusive.
Right. So we saw two issues coming out here, Dr. Brown, the moodiness of the partner and that issue of control. Could you comment on that first?
Sure. I'd like to say that this first example that we saw, even before he came home, psychologically, he had control over her. If you can see that, because she's thinking, oh, if he comes home, this is what he's going to do. So let me do this, 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 and this, and get things in order. So when he comes home, he's in a better mood.
Right.
But she saw that sometimes, even though she did everything she could to have things
still
in order,
happened.
it still happened.
Yes.
Well, the perpetrator here has control of her. And in that case, she does not know what to do. Sometimes she's telling herself, my goodness, the anxiety, you can hear the anxiety when she's talking. And this is the control that the perpetrators like. Once they have you on that level, they can control what you do, how you do it, when you do it. And in society, we also have what's the feminist theory, if I may bring that up. And what that is as a society, men are taught that they're to control women and to have them under to make sure they know their whereabouts.
Okay.
And so that when we do have domestic violence cases, it's not seen as an individual problem of the perpetrator, but society, because they're taught that way.
Yes, yeah. Okay, I have an interesting clip that we're going to bring up just now. But just before we do, you know, there are some women who are in this situation, and men as well, who are in this situation, but yet, despite the control and the moodiness of their partner, they are unable to recognize that it is abuse that is happening. What are some of the signs and the symptoms that we can easily identify that we should pay attention to?
You need to pay attention to the person and their aggressiveness, if they're aggressive verbally, if they're slapping, hitting, punching, kicking, pushing into the wall, calling you names, and then continually putting down your character, thinking it's a joke, maybe saying it in the vicinity of friends and laughing at it. These are signs that you need to look for, because if you sit down with your partner privately and say, honey, when you did this, it really hurt me, and I wish you would not do this, but they constantly continue to do it, then that's a red flag. Those are some of the red flags that you need to look for.
Okay.
Even threatening themselves, I'm going to hurt myself if you don't do this. Burning,
Yes.
Choking, suffocating, all of those signs are severe and you need to call for help.
Okay.
Those are some of the red flags.
All right, good. Now, earlier you indicated that there are many things within our society, and in particular, how our men are socialized and trained to treat and respond to women. So I want to bring this clip up. Let me hear your thoughts on it.
A man's duty is to rule. And anytime the woman stray, pull she back with some right hand and a few kick.
Woman today does pull knife and throw hot water on their husband when they're sleeping. One night, Scotty wife climbed down on the bed and soft me tail with a mortar press. Yes.
Them fellas breaking the woman bad. When I fell with a woman, I just let you know where I stand from the beginning. I just lock the door. Cut she tail good and proper the first night she with me. Then when she said, I just tell she, that's just a warning. It a more, where that come from?
You crazy, yes, ma.
Woman say if you beat them, you don't love them. So you have to show your love, boy. Come home. Look for anything to make noise, you know? Like the rice too soft. Or the meat too hard. And as they argue, stuff up the mouth with the right hand.
But you don't want a woman. You want a punching bag.
Interesting. I want you to hold right there. No comments as yet. We'll go to break. And when we return, we invite our next guest, Mr. Kirk Pitt, social worker.
Girl, wake up. Who the hell is this calling your phone at 3 o'clock in the morning? You're too damn liar. It's just minutes now. We talk about this already.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm. Start thinking.
Babe.
Hello? When? Now? Honey, my sister, she making the baby. We have to go now. We have to go now.
Yeah,
So,
The Ministry of National Security Citizen Security Program.
no, I'm not ready for that.
Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking.
Okay, cool.
Later.
A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
I
Got it. On my terms. On my terms. The lowest interest rate. Guaranteed.
I got no down payment.
I got it. The lowest installments guaranteed.
I got higher purchase at cash price options.
I
got same-day approval.
I got it on my terms.
Standard, never beaten on quality.
This season, we are talking about domestic violence and abuse, and in our episode so far, we've been chatting with Dr. Sharon Brown on the issue of domestic violence and intimate partner abuse. We've looked at the signs and the symptoms, the causes of abuse, and we've heard some interesting clips from persons who have been affected by domestic violence. Now we continue our discussion as we welcome on set with us social worker Mr. Kirk Pitt. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Okay, please have a seat. Okay, Mr. Pitt, I'm anxious to bring you in on our conversation here because I'm certain that you saw the clips that we aired off set. And I want to get your reactions to that from a cultural context. But before you do that, please introduce yourself to us. Tell us who you are.
Okay, my name is Kirk Pitt from the Pitt clan, Tobago. I started as a nurse. I did a BSc in social work. and social policy, BSc in psychology, a master's in clinical intervention, postgrad in mediation and restorative justice, PhD, settling in terms of psychology.
Right.
All right, and the most important qualification is I have lived.
Excellent. I like that you say that, you know. So many people just say they are alive. I like that you're living. And you come to us with a wealth of experience, which we want to hear today as it relates to this issue of domestic violence and abuse that's affecting so many people in this little island of Tobago. But first, your reactions.
Well, it's interesting that how we view domestic violence and how these ladies, unfortunate in their experience, you know, one of them talked about rebelling.
Yes.
You know, and I wondered about that. I'm not judging her, but the fact that she felt that standing up meant rebelling.
Oh, interesting.
You know, in that there is a position that is taken where we have somebody is superior and somebody is inferior, and we feel that we have to literally rebel against a system.
Right.
Rather than looking at equity and sameness.
Right.
Meaning that we're equal, but we may not be the same.
Right. And you're saying that equity should exist in relationships.
That's right. All right. How we see each other.
Yes.
All right. We are equal, but we're not the same.
Right.
All right. As a man and as a woman, the sameness is different.
Right.
But the equity is there in terms of how we see it. And then we have to look at historically. It's unfortunate though that we didn't have clips of men being abused.
Yeah, I would have liked to get my hands on that. But is there a reason for that, Mr. Pitt?
Well, again, the abuse among men, it's underrepresented in terms of reporting, and it's also underrepresented in terms of how society views it. You know, because like recently I was looking at a clip where Whoopi Goldberg was talking about a man's right to hit back when he's hit first. You know, and there was a big debate about it.
Yes.
But there was no question about in terms of the woman's rights.
Yes.
And I want to get away from whose rights it is by saying categorically that nobody has the right to abuse anybody else.
And I think that's a good statement to make at this time. Yes. But when we look at it historically, as you said, and in the context of our culture and our traditions in Tobago, what are there things that we can identify in there that probably predisposes families, relationships to situations of abuse? What are the things that we can put our hand on that makes this such a big problem for us?
It is a big problem just by the way how our society, just like many other societies around the world, how it's structured.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of the so-called maleness of our society, or if a woman shows some aggression, then she's masculine.
Right.
You know, in terms of the gender discussions.
Yeah.
And therefore, what that means, you know, to be a man as the head of the household, you know, I am king and lord of all that is before me.
Yeah.
And therefore, this thing about control and ownership, you know, that we seem to have a problem with, you know, where people own people.
Yeah.
You know, you see, the age of chattel slavery might be over, but we still have mental slavery.
Right. So there is always an expectation that somebody must be in charge and somebody must tell me what to do and how to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you see, there's a flip side to that too. You know, there are situations where if a man is not like that, then he's not viewed as a man. You know, he must, you know, be a man, stand up, you know, be strong, take charge. You know, what does that mean?
But that seems to be a lot of pressure on a man. And Dr. Brown, could you come in here? Is that it seems a lot of pressure in relationships, either to understand and clarify our roles that, you know, somehow we are supposed to fill. How does that impact the individual in terms of dealing with their day-to-day issues?
Well, I think when it comes to couples, they need to first have respect for each other. Understand your role, and if you respect one another, then you will be careful how you treat one another, how you talk to each other. And I think that as women see men and they take their role, which is not one of control, but one of love and protection and providing for, the woman will respect the man. She will actually admire the man, which is what men love. They love to be admired.
Yes.
and I feel that if that equal balance is given, we will see better relationships, better communication, as we saw before in the clip with this gentleman and how he was saying he brings the women into the home and he beats them. But you don't have to do that. You can enjoy one another if you give each other space, privacy, but respect each other.
Okay. Before we explore the whole cycle of abuse now, could you just comment, Mr. Pitt, on whether there is, what we're seeing now is any reversal of those roles? Is that pattern, because that clip we saw was back in the 80s, you know, in the society today. It's set in today's family. Are we seeing that same practice continuing, or is there a changing of the roles happening?
I think that the practice is continuing. I think that when we exploring this phenomenon, we also have to include same-sex couples. We have to include single-parent households. We have to nuclear family, extended families. It exists in this society, regardless of where we are. And the family is the primary agent of socialization. That's where we learn how to behave. That's how we learn how to model behaviors and so forth. And continuously, we've seen that being reflected. For example, if I were to refer to the chart that you put up, the bar chart, and around those times that you had a spike is where we had review, just before that we had review of the laws.
Right.
Okay, so the conversation around domestic violence was hot.
Right.
And then we had incidents occurring in the society that, you know, once something come up, you know, the 9-day wonder.
Right.
And we talk about it and we cry about it and
so
then
you would have been seeing a lot of reporting coming in there. Yes.
And then you will have a settling down of it.
Okay.
Okay, so therefore it would appear to be a decline.
Right.
But I refer to DV, domestic violence, as the secret everybody knows.
Well kept one at that.
Yes.
But does that related any to what we hear mentioned very often about this cycle of abuse? How is that related to this keeping of this secret? What is it about abuse?
Well, abusers is interesting when you look at their personalities. And when I say abusers, I want to say now, I'm not talking about men.
Yes.
I'm talking about abusers.
Right.
When you look at these men, women, whoever they are, institutions, it's some of the most loving, caring persons that you could ever come across.
Okay.
Most times we wouldn't believe that these persons are that abusive. And they have their loving, calm, kind periods. And then you have, just like a volcano, when they start to rumble.
Right.
and then you have the explosion. And it is not the explosion that happens first most times.
Yes.
Most times it starts off with the old talk, the quarrel, the misunderstanding, you know, the finances, control of finances, control of friends. You see, you and I are wonderful. God put us together, and everybody else is trying. They're jealous of us. They don't. We have to keep them out of our relationship. And before you know it, you're cut off from all your support structures.
Right. Yes.
Then you might be working, unlike the woman of old, you might be employed. And so we're both employed, so you know what? We shouldn't both have our salaries tied up.
Yes.
So why not you pay the loans and so forth, and I will see about the day-to-day activities.
And that's very subtle where the control is
Very
coming in.
subtle.
So after that, what happens then?
So it expands. It expands from these. So before you know it, not even being aware, you're tied.
Yes.
You're trapped into a situation. And many people feel that this is only stupid people, you know, end up in these situations. Well, have you know, every strata of the society
is affected.
Yeah. A lot of women don't want to give up their Mercedes and their BMWs.
Right.
And they're being abused.
Yes. So you're put in a situation of dependency, of control, and
That's
the
right.
abuse steps in there. But interestingly, you talked about the issue of the isolation. And Dr. Brown, I want to ask you to comment quickly on that. And then we move to a conversation that we had with Officer Collis, ASP Collis Hazer, regarding that important issue of reporting, as you noted in the trends that we were seeing. What's happening with reporting of abuse? How do we report? Where do we report? Who do we report to? So Dr. Brown, what about the isolation that is significant in maintaining this whole silence regarding abuse?
It's very significant because when the perpetrator can remove all of your support, whether it be family, whether it be church, best friend, or whomever, then he has the ability to control what you do, how you do it, when you do it, and where you do it. And then he can start to, it would start we were told before, verbally. And once he starts to say those things to you, you know, nobody's gonna love you, you've gotta listen to what I'm saying, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're fat, nobody's gonna ever want you. And then these things sink into your psyche, then he goes for the kill, or she goes for the kill.
Yes.
Because we've seen many situations where women are also abusing the men.
Right.
You're no good, you're a deadbeat, all of these things, you know, you can't provide. And these things hurt men. So we're seeing the cycle because the man may come after her physically, and then that cycle goes for both male and female.
Then after that physical, after the violence erupts, things happen. That to me is a very easy time to walk away. If somebody's beating me up, what happens after that causes the person to still stay?
Walk away to where?
Well, they may say, well, let's go out, or just start loving again. Something will happen and starts loving her again. And
it's not that easy. Remember, before the physical comes the psychological.
Yeah.
Okay? And sometimes they're so tied in, there's nowhere to go.
Because you're isolated already. Yes.
Right, so they feel that all their power has been eroded. There's the sense of me is gone.
That's right.
So they might dress up nicely and go to their offices where their boss or what have you, but when they come home, they can't function.
It's nowhere.
So psychologically, they don't have the power to move at that time.
Okay. All right. It's interesting that you say that, because that's the time when we are asking persons to make the report, tell someone. So let's go to our conversation with ASP Collis Hazel. Thank you very much, Mr. Hazel, for joining us on Tobago CSI to help us to understand a little bit more about reporting abuse. So tell us, why is it important to report abuse, and how, when do we report?
Okay, first of all, domestic violence is a serious crime with Trinidad and Tobago, a serious offense, and therefore One, it is important that all offenses ought to be reported to the police. More so, it is an offense that is perpetrated against a female or a male person. And we treat domestic violence, which at times end up as murder, as a very serious offense in which ought to be dealt with. We expect citizens encountering domestic violence would make such report to any police officer in person, in uniform, or it can be reported by calling the station at any one of our telephone numbers, 999, or any station throughout Tobago, or the person can report to the station in person. At the police station, it is our expectation, a protocol in terms of how we deal with domestic violence victims, in that we render assistance promptly. In case where persons are injured, we would be treating with those injured persons by making our relevant visits to our medical institutions to render aid. We would interview our domestic violence victims in a very private interviewing room where we would record statement and listen to their concerns. So one ought not to fear coming into the station and in the public domain at our charge room or reception areas to relate their story where other persons can hear. From the time it is considered to be a domestic violence report, it is treated in a way in which we would be able to take that person to our interviewing room and to have them further interviewed and examined. We also afford the opportunity at the community policing department, in which we have much more persons being trained in how to deal and handle domestic violence issues, so that we would seek the guidance of our community policing officers. In that vein, we have social workers, we have persons in the police service who have social work qualified psychologists, and they are able better to treat with such situation at the level of the station, at the community policing unit.
Well, that sounds really good, Mr. Hayes, and it seems like we've come a long way in this service. But tell us, what are some of the challenges that you have had as a service in treating with this issue of reporting, maybe both from your perspective and the perspective of those who are victims of abuse?
First of all, it's important to understand that issues of domestic violence are private and dear to persons, and therefore there has to be that level of trust in ensuring that your information that you are provided is treated with utmost confidentiality. These are incidents that are going to be happening between husbands and wives, and therefore, and vice versa, in terms of the victim as we treat with those situations. It is clear that that trust, that mutual trust in relationship, one will not want to be able to share very easily, despite even being hurt or affected. And therefore, it poses a challenge for victims of domestic violence at times to come forward to make that initial report to the police service. So sometimes they would go through their period of violence very easy, very secretively, without reporting it. At times, at best practice, we have heard that they may have gone to at least 7 persons before they end up to the police in order to make a report. And it is important in making that report that we, as officers, our responsibility is to build that trust and maintain that level of confidentiality in terms of how we treated with the incident. So those may have been some of the reasons why persons in the past will feel that their information is going to be getting out there, and therefore that has created that problem of victims fearing to report. We also have scenarios where the provider, whichever is the victim or perpetrator on the offense, they look to the idea of the longevity of their relationship. What is going to happen? What is going to happen to the children? What is going to happen to me if I have that opportunity in reporting my partner? Right. And therefore there's that instant fear that if I do that and he or she is incarcerated, what is going to happen to the children? So this is another area. We also have the area too where the matter started and persons refuse in terms of continuing the matter. So, and they go back to this living in the same situation and the practice starts all over again in terms of the abuse, the cycle, that web of abuse continues in treating with such a situation. So these are some of the key areas in which we have to treat with at times, but it's important for our victims out there to understand that the police is not only about incarcerating persons, it is about meeting and treating with the issues in terms of mediating the circumstances, and in instances where we ourselves can't deal with it, we seek other assistance in terms of ensuring that either male or female, they are not battered and abused.
All right, fantastic. That's very encouraging. So I want you to just tell us what specifically should someone do if they have to make this report? What would be your final words of advice to someone?
Victims of domestic violence ought to report these matters. I think it is important that they seek the guidance of the police officer in terms of one of the agents that is responsible for resolving issues where crime and criminal activities are taking place as personal attack. Of course, we need to understand that love doesn't mean that you accept to be battered. And we ought to understand that, as I mentioned before, in a relationship is a mutual understanding, and where there are disagreement, it can be resolved by way of mediation, it can be resolved by way of counseling, and therefore these are services that we provide in terms of helping as well. I want to advise victims that if you have to report such a situation, you ought not to fear. The police service is there to meet and treat with such a situation and to deal with it in a confidential matter. Your matter is dealt with in private. You can report domestic violence at any police station or to any police officer on the beat in uniform of your scenarios. You can also call. And of course, there's the opportunity where you can visit the community policing department. If you don't want to go perhaps in the station in your community, you can come to the community policing department and we'll be able to treat with your situation in terms of providing that assistance. You are not alone in this situation, and therefore you should not in any way feel that you can't go anywhere with it, and you just have to accept that. Battering a person is not an acceptable behavior in a relationship, and therefore we need to love, understand, respect, and treat each person in that mutual, respectable way. Is about gaining that respect for each other. And therefore, I would want to say to all victims out there in domestic violence situation, you are not alone, and therefore their help is at the door of the police service and Tobago Division in particular. Come forward and report your incident, and they will be treated with utmost confidentiality.
Right now, we'll go to a clip that will highlight the experience of one of our victims of abuse with reporting.
I went to the police station, which was Scarborough Police Station, and I met an older police officer. And I told him what had happened, and he said, listen, you shouldn't take that. Why are you taking that? And he told me, he started telling me the steps. He said, listen, your first thing is to make your report, and I will give you a piece of paper stating that you did make a report. And then your next step is to go up to the magistrate court by the JP. And he told me everything what to do. Wait, take a number, go see her and tell her exactly what is happening. And I did. I did go. I asked questions. I asked him where to go, who to see, and I kept asking. And I did go and met the JP, and I did explain to her all that was happening. And I did get a day to go to court.
Dr. Brown, what's happening here with the person who is in this situation of abuse and having to follow all of those steps in making the report?
Well, she may be going through a number of series. Like, for instance, she might be wondering, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to get support? But she seems as though she was very on top. She was on top of things. She asked the questions, she said. She tells us what she did first, what she did second. She kept asking and asking, getting her questions answered. And that is what you need to do. You need to report it. You need to make sure that you follow up. You need to be very careful of what you say to who you say as you're going through the process, because you're constantly thinking, will the perpetrator come back to get me? How can I be safe? Can I trust those around me? All these things are going on in your mind. So the best thing to do is to make sure you make that report, stay on top of it. Because if not, a lot of times when they go back into, let's say, the home, or the perpetrator calls again, they tend to go back into that psychological mode to where they want to do what the perpetrator says. They just go along with the flow again, go back into the cycle of violence. Honey, I love you, come back, let's try to make it up. And then that's where we see the cycle going on and on
again. So Mr. Pitt, at this critical juncture, what is available to provide support for persons in making that report and following through with the decisions that they've made?
Well, fortunately, and that young lady, as was stated before, she seemed to be on top of things. What matter there is the competence of the persons and the agencies. Okay, because we have a lot of policies and programs in place. What matters is how we roll it out.
Yes.
And in this case, she was able to report it to somebody to an officer who was quite competent, had the information, knew what to do, where to go, what happened next, and what was most important, could walk her through the process. I'm aware, to answer the question that you posed, is there's something called victim and witness officers attached to the TTPS, and their role is to work with the victims and witnesses of crime when it occurs and help them through the process.
Good.
You see, what used to happen in the past is that an offense was an offense against the state, not against, it wasn't seen as a person. So it asks the question, you know, what laws were broken, who broke the law, and how shall we punish them?
Right.
So it was very impersonal.
Yes.
With the new system in place, they ask the questions, what was the harm? Who was harmed? And how shall we repair the harm?
Right. So it's a much softer approach now.
Well, it is. It takes into consideration both the perpetrator and the victim of the crime.
Right.
Okay, so in this case, now it's a crime, it's seen as a crime against a person. So therefore, you have to be aware what about the safety of the person and or their dependents? You know, what is the process? When we report it today, what is to happen next?
Right. So the system is much more responsive to persons' needs right now.
So in addition to that, we have social services. So we have that in terms of what the TTPS provides. Then we have the programs through social services that are available, whether it be for the youth, for teenagers, for the adult. And then you have homes, special homes that are not published,
yes,
that persons can be taken to when a risk assessment is done.
Right. So there is some level of support in the system, available for persons who are ready to come forward and identify that abuse is happening and want to get help. And that's good. I want to pause at this juncture and probably bring our audience in. They've been such a wonderful audience. And during the break, a couple persons indicated that they had some questions that they want to ask you. So we want to invite them to ask those questions now. So I see a gentleman there in front. Could you tell us your name and you can pose your question?
My name is Tyrone McDougall, and my question is at the beginning of the speech, I recognize that when it started off, I realized that was more like men, domestic violence. It seems that it's only men that is the one who commits this act, and I was very concerned because I realized that men also are victims to domestic violence. So I wanted to know when we started off, why we started off like that. I like to hear it's vice versa. Men and women, domestic violence affect both parties, male and female.
Okay, so who wants to take that? Dr. Brown, okay. Is this a female issue, domestic violence?
No, it's a male issue too. We have a lot of females also. And even though men may not report the physical violence, psychologically they are violated as well. Right. They are called names, as I stated before. You're no good, deadbeat. Right. You can't even provide. What good are you? These types of things hurt a man. Right. And as I stated before, they may react in violence. But we're seeing that violence is on both sides. And men are affected just as much as females. So this is a problem that we need together to work towards, because it's not just a male-dominated issue where men are the perpetrators. We have females as well.
Yeah. But don't forget the history of the thing. Sometimes we tend to forget the history of it. Why men are so underreported, understated, and sometimes the structures don't look at men who are being abused. The history is that the power was normally vested in men.
Yes.
And that children and women were seen as the ones who didn't have the power.
Yes.
And therefore the power imbalance saw a lot of women and children being abused throughout history.
Right.
Now that does not mean that men were not abused throughout history. It's just that for I think the stats show 1 in 4 female having some kind of history of violence.
Yes.
And 1 in 8 men having a similar history.
Right. So clearly there is an imbalance because of the history, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Okay, good.
So sometimes when people wonder, well, why it's sung in this way or what have you, right? We don't forget the history behind the thing.
Okay, so we have another question from our audience. Yes?
My name is Sandra Jones. I realized in the clipping the man was very boastful about what he was doing. He think was something good that he was doing. But I would like to know from you if you have some program or anything to help those men.
Okay, good question. Now, I almost don't want to put this to our panel now, put them on the spot, but we have an entire episode coming up where we will be looking at the issues related to the abuser and what's available, looking at understanding what's happening with them. But if you have a very quick comment, not getting into much detail about it, please tell us. Is there anything now to help? Mr. Pitt?
How we socialize our children. It's important. For example, to be brief, we give our dolls, our girls' dolls and teacup and teas and what have you, and we teach them from baby how to be caring and family nurturing and whatnot. And we tell our boys, you know, what boys are made of what?
Frogs and snails and crocodile tails.
And we tell them don't cry, and we do things like man up and you know, and all of that. And then when they behave that way, we criticize them.
Right.
And when they don't, you know, if they tend to be a little bit softer, we say, what kind of Makume man you're raising there?
Right.
You know, so what we really telling them?
Yeah. So we're confusing our boys. And we need to allow them to be in touch with their emotional selves as well. So,
right. So it is not as simple as that, we know, but...
Yes. Okay, do we have any final questions from our audience? If not, we'll go to break in a short while. But before we do, we have a couple questions that were called in via social media, which we would want our panel to answer now. Yes, so let's hear the questions.
Hi, I'm Natasha from Mason Hall, and my question is, what can I do to get out of a situation of domestic violence?
Hi, I am Patrina. I am from Bon Accord in Tobago. My question is, are women perpetrators of domestic violence? And how common is this in Tobago?
Hi, my name is Chrislyn. I live in Lambo, and my question is, are you being abused if you're not being hit? How do I know if I'm abused if he isn't hitting me?
Okay, so we have a couple interesting questions there. Dr. Brown, how do I know I'm abused if he's not hitting me?
Well, we have psychological abuse.
Yeah.
And what that is composed of is constantly calling names, putting you down, making fun of you in public, in front of your friends, anything to lower your self-esteem. And then constantly doing it over and over and over. It might be coupled with a slap, a punch in the wall, where he says, I'll be you next. Threats. Threats are very common before the real thing starts.
Okay.
So it could just be something simple where he cuts himself. I'll cut myself if you don't be quiet. And he might cut himself and say, you're going to get it next. And then when he does, he'll say, well, you caused me to do it. It's you are the reason why I'm acting this way. So he puts the blame on you to where the person says, oh my goodness, and they start looking at themselves. Maybe I'm the one that caused this. And then they continue to talk about themselves and to feel as though they are the one reason why all this abuse is happening. That is very, very common. And it continues, and that just goes around in a cycle. And let's go from the female perspective. She might constantly talk about the man and constantly put him down, never tell him he's doing anything good or even give him thanks. Because men thrive on that. They love to feel appreciated. And you're constantly doing that. It's almost like taking a hammer and taking a nail and hitting it in, just not letting go to where he explodes because he's been quiet for so long. So back and forth. And these are the signs that you see. Once you start seeing this, you either need to go see a counselor, that both of you, or one of you needs to remove yourself till things calm down if they can. Because if it continues, then you really need to seek help so that it stops.
Right. So we may very well be underestimating the impact of this emotional abuse.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so Mr. Pitami, how do we, according to the question, how do we break this cycle? How do we end the abuse?
Well, the thing about it, to add to what Dr. Brown is saying, is that a lot of people don't even know they're being abused. Okay? A lot of abuse is so much about also perception. That's the non-physical abuse.
Yes.
A lot of it is so much about perception. Some people are in situations where they're treated very, very well, you know, and they're not recognizing that that is abuse too. Right. Confuse you? Okay. So what about, you know, the woman, and I've come across many like that, you know, who the man goes to the grocery store, he goes to the market, he goes to pay and tech, he does everything for her, and she sees it as love.
Right. Yes.
Yes? And I was in a situation where one of these ladies, their husband passed away. and she became so depressed because she didn't even know how to go to pay tea and tech.
Yes.
She couldn't do anything.
So that
herself.
relates to the learned helplessness that Dr. Brown spoke to earlier.
Sometimes we perceive a whole lot of spoiling, as we would put it, as love. Okay? And we selectively say what abuse is, depending on the outcome.
Okay. Right.
All right? And what I'm saying is that we have to go past that.
Right.
If we're looking at a modern society where we're talking about equity and all of that and so forth, then both parties have the right to contribute. Both parties have the right not to be disrespectful and abusive to each other.
So I get from what you're saying that the first step in ending the abuse is recognizing that the abuse is happening in the first place. Now we must go to our special surprise now, but I want to give you maybe 30 seconds to give you a quick final comments, and then we have a special surprise for this wonderful audience that we've had.
Okay, I'd like to say that domestic violence is a problem that many families are going through. It doesn't go to the rich, the poor, or the middle class. It's in every sphere, but it needs to be reported. And then remember, very important, if you don't report it, it never happened. So make sure that you report, get help, keep your support, and remember that you're not in it alone.
Okay, Mr. Pitt, your final comments?
To piggyback on what Dr. Brown said, in addition to that, I would also say that we as a society must rise up and say it is not okay. It is not okay for little boys or little girls. It's not okay for bullying. It's not okay to treat people in the streets the way we treat them. It's not okay when we drive in to be cussing people and carrying on. It's not okay to carry it into the workplace, because at the end of the day it goes home.
Yeah. And that's a good note to end on. We have to take collective responsibility. It's not okay to promote the violence and the abuse. So we'll go to break right now, and when we return, we have a special surprise for our viewing audience.
Now I'm talking to myself, but I ain't even hearing me. It's like my voice of reason ran away with my sanity. And by rehearsing these lines in these mirrors, it won't change my destiny. As every time I get the urge to leave, he grab me by my weave and tell me without me he can't breathe. I guess my love is his oxygen. But another day in this house with this man is like inhaling nitrogen. How did I end up sleeping with the enemy?
If you are a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence, please call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-SAVE, 800-7283. A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program. Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm and start thinking.
I got it. On my terms. On my terms.
The lowest interest rate, guaranteed.
I got no down payment.
I got it. The lowest installments guaranteed.
I got higher purchase at cash price options.
I
got same day approval.
I got it on my terms.
Standard, never beaten on quality.
I'm Samantha John.
I am Nadia Batson.
The incredible Myron B.
I'm K.I. Chucky Gordon.
Hi, my name is Sheriff.
And we are Freetown.
And I'm urging each and every citizen of our beautiful country.
It's time for us to put a stop to crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago once and for all.
In Freetown, we believe that every citizen has the right to life.
We need to be responsible not only for ourselves but for others as well. I think the only way to counteract any kind of fear is to inject love.
We have the power to stand up, to unite, to stay positive, and to win back our country. Build a culture of lawfulness, peace, respect, love, harmony.
The Citizen Security Program.
Stop the violence and abuse.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm.
Stay calm. Stay calm.
Stay calm and start thinking.
Start thinking.
and start thinking.
A message from the Citizen Security Program. Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm and start thinking.
Thank you very much. And welcome back to Tobago CSI. Now, we've been chatting with our special panel of experts, Dr. Sharon Brown, psychologist, and our social worker, Mr. Kirk Pitt. And as we wrap up this episode of Tobago CSI, where we looked at domestic violence and intimate partner abuse, we have a special surprise for our wonderful studio audience. Some lucky person out there will be walking away with a gift from Visto Enterprises. So we have numbers on our seats. So if your number is number 38, then you're a lucky winner for today. So let's see who has number 38. Number 38? Wow, come on up, come on up. We have a winner. Coming up. Thank you very much. So tell me, what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Steve Lucas. I'm representing the Trek family that's here with me.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you.
Okay, great, Mr. Lucas, and here's your prize. All right. Okay, have a good day. Okay. And as we wrap this episode up of Tobago CSI, we'll feature a new breakout artist for today, Xavier, from his album, The Live Free Project, doing his single retrospection. But before we go, I want you to always remember to spread the love, stop the violence and abuse, stay calm, and start thinking. This episode was brought to you courtesy the Citizen Security Program. Xavier.
Thank you. You treat me now. Freeze time for the retrospection. Got unanswered questions. I'm looking for a new direction. Hello. I live a life of indiscretion. Awareness misdirected. Can you tell me what's the lesson? Hey. What if I never rolled up swishers and never crossed all of these misses off my hit list? Who on Instagram posing for pictures got me wondering if they think likes is they riches. What if I was never uncool from the start, the most popular jigger in school? Shorty's telling me I'm cute even though I'm always rude, sending all they nudes even though I'm asking crudely. And I'm disrespectful to my teachers. Collection of my women based on physical features. Reciprocate the feeling simply cause they like my sneakers. Shout out to Felicia, Khalees, and Kanisha. Life's a puzzle, fit the pieces. Keep your eyes open, look out for the leeches. Know the difference between Judas and Peter. And be careful when you choose your Mona Lisa. Freeze time for the retrospection. Got unanswered questions. I'm looking for a new direction. I live a life of indiscretion. Awareness misdirected. Can you tell me what's the lesson? Crafted conscience of the consequence. All my ex-girls told me that I condescend. Thanks for the compliment. Introspection got Confucius trying to comprehend. Sometimes I get lost in my own thoughts. Paper chasing fantasies, screw the soul course. Any price willing to pay to be my own boss. Refuse to compromise, well that's your loss. So now I'm back to the board. I'm back to the club, I'm back to the broads. I'm selling keys and I'm kicking down doors. Tell the audience to hold the applause. No love, I just do it for the glory. Hoping I'm going to somebody tell my story. Shout out to Gabby girl, I know that you adore me. I didn't mean for it to end so sorely. They say love's free but it cost me. Staying up late night, black coffee. No texting, nah, she ain't call me. Forget that chick, man, let's head to the party. Let's head to the party.
Let's head to the party.
Let's head to the party.